Por Hinayi, Marianas Ancestral Connections. Hinayi is the word for genealogy, Gifino CHamoru. Tautano. We all know the word. There's a connection between other languages in the Pacific, Sulawesi particularly, and some of the kinds of words that we use to describe ourselves, and Tautano was one of those words, or Tautau was one of those words. The people of the land. Obviously, land and lineage are inextricably intertwined. We cannot think of ourselves as people without the land. Consequently, Tautau, because we're not just Tautau, we are Tautau of these lands. And in our case, the lands of Laguas Zangani. The identifier question from the CHamoru perspective. You know, in English, when we meet each other, we introduce each other. Where are you from? Who are you? Means what is your name? You identify yourself. In Fino CHamoru, that is very different. When you ask the question, Tautau amanu how and Hadzi how, nobody needs to know your first name. Nobody needs to know your last name. They need to know which clan you come from. What is the social organization that might connect you and me? And so the question is much more profound when asked, Gifino CHamoru. Tautau amanu how can mean, do we share the same lineage? Ko tautau tinian how, ko tautau saipan how, ko tautau luta how, pat ko tautau guahan how. Okay, so that's one way of asking the question. The other might be, where are your roots? Where are your family roots? So Hadzi how, Gifino CHamoru, is not who are you as in what is your name. Hadzi how means who are you in terms of your lineage. These days, you can't second guess by the way one looks, Hadzi zu, no? Sa guaha apakahu, right? There are some of us who are light-skinned, some of us who are dark-skinned, and many of us who are in between. So the color of skin's shade is not telling, but 500 years of colonial history and the ensuing genetic mixtures that have occurred in this history have made us a very vastly diverse people. And so it's difficult to identify who you are, but you can, by your features, be identified for which clan you come from. For example, people will recognize my high cheekbones and say, oh, Familia Torres Hamzu. I always used to get fascinated by that. Tamano matungo na Familia Torres zu, ginini fasuhu, right? How can you tell somebody's connected to somebody else by their cheekbones or by their nose or by their eyes? But they do. So this is another way that Chamorros will instantly identify you with a clan for which you have features. But the most reliable data, of course, which connects us is the invisible data of the DNA. And these are very fascinating studies that have connected our people, the people of the islands of Laguas Zangani, to waves of people who have come through Southeast Asia and into the Pacific. So those are some ways that we can begin to understand our original connections. There are studies, some of which were mentioned earlier. There are actually conflicting interpretations now of which direction our ancestors came from, whether from the south upward or from Southeast Asian coastal areas outward. But we're all connected. Suffice to say, we know that those connections exist. They are demonstrated in our DNA and connect us to people who were great navigators about 5,000 years ago, began to move into the ocean Pacific. You can't tell who we are by the surnames we carry either, because our surnames are just as diverse as our genetic pool. And this is just an example of a Guam newsletter, October 1923, page which lists a kind of the deaths that occurred in that period of time with all the different kinds of surnames. And we know, for example, that in census documents, if your brothers went to declare themselves and get their cedulas one day and were given a surname, and then you and your sisters came the next day, you might not be registered as having the same name. This was a kind of inconsistency because, as we can tell, Chamorro clans didn't have last names. Last names were introduced to us through the Spanish colonial period. Last names are not a reliable way. If you say Familian Cruz, Hadziguini Tai Cruz, who here can claim that in their lineage there is no Cruz? Man todusit man Cruz and Chamorro, right? But the point is that the last name, the apellido as we call it, is not as telling as other ways that we identify our connections. But we do know that our origins connect us, and that Laguas and Gani are the 14 islands in this archipelago that our ancestors settled and that became our homeland. And that we know connects us. Ginin amanu imanau taumona, where did the taumona come from? Manau taumona is the plural form of tautomona, and they are the people from before. So where did they come from? The prevailing theory, of course, that many of us have bought into is that we are part of the Austronesian languages, the Malayo-Polynesian Austronesian language chain that connects us with Southeast Asian origins, with Indonesia, with Malaysia, with Sulawesi, with the peoples of Taiwan. So there are connections. Clearly there are connections. We share some vocabulary with these nations, and they're still recognizable. When I went to Malaysia, I kept turning around because I kept hearing what I thought was CHamoru, which was Malay, and sounded, used words that were similar to CHamoru. Letsi, susu, those kinds of words are just exactly the same. Langit, puengi. In the Philippines, they say manok, we say manok. So there are lots of, there are many, many words. Original words in languages that describe that are not borrowed words, that describe our connection as well. What we know about where our ancestors came from, migrations from Southeast Asia into island Pacific about 4,000 years ago. The first islands in the island Pacific to be settled, anthropologists and archaeologists tell us that, shared language structure and some basic vocabulary with Southeast Asian and other Pacific languages in the cluster of languages called the Malayo-Polynesian branch of Austronesian languages. When we're teaching about Austronesian languages, kids will say, well, where is Austronesia? And we have to remind ourselves that that's a linguistic construct. It's not a country, collection of languages that have some similar fundamentals. And the two morphological characteristics of the Malayo-Polynesian languages are a system of affixation and reduplication to form new words. And if you speak CHamoru, you will know that we are the masters of affixes, and we're also the masters of reduplication. And so we grow our language substantially through these two processes. That's what connects us to other Malayo-Polynesian languages. I didn't know that until relatively recently and was fascinated that other people affix as much as we do. Now, we mentioned this before, and I forgot that I put it into my slides for the archaeologists in the room. We have, the Kumisión has put together a recommendation of the periodization of pre-colonial times. And we aligned it with the major archaeological time periods that have been provided to us by archaeologists. But when we think about our pre-colonial period, we call it Itinituhun Manau Tautano. This is when we all began, right? itinituhun manautautano. And the first period is manhalum imantatasi. Navigators came on shore, right? They dibble-dabbled, they went and looked for other destinations, came back. And so this is that period which archaeologists called Unay 1, which is a designation for 3,500 to 3,000 BP. And then the next phase is Manyaga Imantatasi, which means they settled, they stayed. They came and they stayed, and the ocean voyages stayed and established their homeland. This is in archaeological designation Unay 2 from 2,500 to 1,600 BP. Manhattalum is when they settled further inland. This is called Hudzul in archaeological designation from 1,600 to 1,000 BP. And then Manmahatsa Lati, they became Lati builders, and that is from 800 to 1,700 CE. Those are the periods that we recommend to archaeologists, and you're very happy, you can take a shot of this. If you want it instantly, we also have a very extended list, as I said, in our website for the historical periods as well. The Lati village settlements of Guam in the 1600s. This is a map that we had acquired courtesy of Guam Cultural Repository, but it really shows the extent of settlement on Guahan in the 1600s. And we also have many CHamoru place names that we're examining as a result of maps like these. What we know about our indigenous language, again, is that it comes from the Austronesian language family and pushed out of Southeast Asia, maybe upward, maybe downward, maybe sideward, but we know that we're connected to those body of languages. We do know that our language and our culture connects us. The language that our ancestors spoke and have passed down through 150 generations serves as our font of wisdom and the umbilical cord to our cultural ethos as a people. I know that you know that I am representing the Kumisión Fino CHamoru and that we're hot on language. But the truth of the matter is that our Chamorro language is embedded with tremendous amounts of knowledge from our ancestors. That if we just unpacked those concepts, like inafa maulik, and inagwaiza, inadanya, inarespetu, all these terms are loaded with an understanding of the ethos, the belief system of the Chamorro people. So knowing and speaking Chamorro is integral to our Chamorro identity. So when we ask the question, Hadzi, how? The real question is, what is our lineage connection? Are you my kin? At what level? What obligations do I have in relation to you? That sort of thing. In Chamorro, this question is quite different from asking someone for their name or what they're called, but rather the question is, how might we be connected by blood or through marriage? Because we begin to recite who married who, and we begin to enlarge the network of reciprocal caring and obligation. These are some of the questions that families on Guam have asked and have begun to answer through very, very sophisticated genealogy, family histories, and we show you some of these today. Other terms related to descendants include, and these have been vetted by the Kumisión and we recommend them, Imanatsahaga, we are related by blood, Imanatsahaga, okay? When you are related by blood, we call that Manatsahaga. Atsagwafak are the clan members. We share the same guafak, okay? The birthing mat, we share the same guafak. Familia is family, parientes is relatives or kin. Those are Spanish borrowed terms that we use. For the Chamorro people, no matter where you live or what surname you have, lineage defines the social order and the nature of relationships. And this is most readily demonstrated through our obituaries. If you do Dave does postcard research, but CHamoru's do obituary research, right? Because we find a lot of information about who we are and how we're connected to each other. And this is sometimes where you find out about Famagun Songkwan, the outside family, the other connected families that are not often spoken about formally. It's also quite evident in the way that people introduce themselves to an elder. The personal name is not as significant as your atsagwafak. And if they want to know what your personal name is, they'll ask you, Hafa ma'aagang ho, right? And you can tell them, oh, this is the way I'm called. Si Loling ma'aagang zo. And then people call me Loling. The Flores family of the Mariana Islands, Malia shared with us a wealth of information in La Sangre Llama, which she put together in a book, but this was the original panorama stories. And you can see that there are so many ramas to this family. The Ramas de Cabeza is one, but then there are many others that are manifested here. So just want to show you the breadth and depth of these pieces of research. So all of this is very important. Why? Because in modern life, people feel disconnected. Family is one way that we maintain connection and stability, and mental health, because we belong to someone, we belong to a group of people, and that group of people defines me and will take care of me, kind of thing. But there are a lot of young people who cannot name who their grandparents are or their great-grandparents are. When I was growing up, wherever we went, Nana gave us a genealogical lesson. She pointed out who to go to, who to ngingi, hazi, gui, tegwini, tegwini. And so you heard it over and over and over again. It became, imprinted in your brain. Children don't have the benefit of that kind of guidance these days, and they're hungry for it. This is just an example of my ancestral tree from my mother's side. Lots of resources, folks, that are available. It's amazing what is available. The Society of CHamoru Genealogists kind of kicked this off formally, and indices have been developed. Bernard Punsalan, you may know him. He's very, very actively involved in CHamoru roots, and he's provided us with a jump start at the Kumisión for establishing a genealogical laboratory. This is our genealogy lab. The governor came in and we were showing her lineage on the program. But we have several computers and established a Saganinilaw, Puthinazits, and Lugar. And the reason is because a lot of people have reached out to the Kumisión and said, can you help us find out who we are? So we're trying to bring all of that information together under one roof, and we invite you to come register, if you will. Here's the QR code. Is this the QR code for that? Yeah, you can register right here, but you can also register online at our website and come and visit us. You can visit us physically, but you can also have a virtual visit with us. And people from that place called diaspora, whoever mentioned that before, right? They also come and visit us regularly through the internet. There are many types of resources that can be used, and we're really trying to build our resource power in partnership with Mark and through volunteers. And I would be remiss, really, if I didn't recognize Lisa Martinez Betanga. She's not here today, but Lisa's an incredible volunteer who comes weekly to share her knowledge with our staff and to teach them how to use the tools that we have available. And so these are some of the tools that we have at the Saganinilaw. Vital statistics documents, and we're working to get all of the vital statistics historical records housed at the Kumisión. Land records, judicial records, and you can see Mark is all over these documents, right? Because we work with them to locate these documents. The Guam Recorder is a very valuable tool, and a lot of it is online, so we're able to extrapolate from there. Census documents are invaluable as well, and they come in different formats. including Dr. Jane Underwood's cards, which are filled with very rich information. Family photos are valuable as well. And then there's the question about authenticity, which I always like to end with. Our sense of identity as a colonized indigenous people has been called into question. We've been called all kinds of things, including poor imitation of Spanish, bastardized culture, we're not true, authentically Pacifican, on and on and on. The litany is long because we've been the longest to be colonized, right? We've had the longest history of colonization. Fortunately, we are coming out of that fog, that colonial fog, and we're reclaiming who we are. And that, for the Kumisión, means reclaiming our words and reclaiming the way we spell and pronounce those words. So that's very critical. But we know who we are. And we just have to tell our story over and over and over again. And we also have to tell the story of our ancestors through our own perceptions. Knowing our genealogical connections and family histories constitute an act of cultural sovereignty. Folks, we don't have political sovereignty. We don't have economic sovereignty. God knows if we ever will. But we have cultural sovereignty. And no one can take that away from us. We are the only ones who can give that away. So exercise cultural sovereignty. Exercise that right. Don't cluna si Zeus maasi.